Are your people working hard but not reaching their full potential? The problem is not effort, it is development. At the Modern Observer Group, we transform workforce development into real performance. Our human-centered achievement programs help your team think better, communicate stronger, and execute at a higher level. That means higher employee engagement, stronger leadership, and measurable results across your organization. If you want a workforce that performs, leads, and delivers, it is time to invest in your people. Visit modernobserver.com and discover how the Modern Observer Group helps you build a workforce that wins.
Hello, and welcome to the Success Showcase, the podcast that helps you succeed in your business life and career. I'm your host, Eric Lopkin from the Modern Observer Group, and with me as always is Chip Janiszewski from the Happiness and Success GPS. Chip, how you doing this week?
I'm doing fantastic, Eric. Happy spring.
Happy spring. Yes, this is our first podcast since spring has sprung, and we are looking forward to a fantastic season. I've already kicked off, had an interesting weekend. As our listeners know, I have a tendency to go to a lot of seminars and, listen to audiobooks. Well, this weekend I had the opportunity to hear Brian Tracy and Jack Canfield.
Wow.
And, we've talked about their books on the podcast, so hearing them live was fantastic. And I had not realized that Jack Canfield has officially retired, so he doesn't do a lot of these anymore. But it was absolutely amazing listening to them talk and about not just goals and, what they teach, but how they came about these things. So it was a really interesting weekend. And the weekend was sort of thrown into a little bit of chaos because in the Lopkin household, we switched cell phone carriers, which did not go smoothly. Now, nothing against the carrier, these things happen, but it showed me something that I don't usually think about. We have so much stuff around us that we rely on a daily basis. And the chaos it causes when you have to switch up your routines and change your habits. It was really eye-opening to realize, oh, wait a minute, we've got to take care of this fairly quickly.
Yeah. I switched over all my stuff a few months ago, as you well know, because I had to switch my website and things like that. And also with phones and going from iPads and all that other kind of stuff. And it's just crazy. So, but the both of you have a whole lot better background in that kind of stuff than I do. So
it is, and that's actually why I bring this up, because, talking about change, and we've got a special guest today who has done a lot in his life with change. I'm going to apologize right off the bat because I am never going to pronounce your name properly. Thankfully, Sri is gracious enough to allow us to call him Sri.
yeah,
But Sri,
that's all I've known him as is Sri.
yeah. But Sri, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Thank you so much, Eric and Chip. As a good segue, Eric gave me my full name is Srivathsa Ramachandran. But as for anyone else who wants to have fun with my name, please, you're welcome to it. But you can call me Sri. And again, just wanted to introduce myself. I have brought up in India, did my education in India, and then no big guesses. As majority of the Indians do, I also specialized in computers, and I did almost 24 years in IT consulting. I worked for 21 years with Accenture, which is one of the leading consulting giants. And then all of a sudden, I felt like I was really burnt out and I needed a change. And one of the things which drove me to the change was I was trying to have a handful. I have two wonderful daughters, twin daughters who are 7 years old, who act now like one 14-year-old. I was getting my hands full and I was not able to manage my time with a lot of travel and the commitments. I wanted something local and at the same time meaningful. And while I was thinking, noodling as any IT expert, we always kick the can down the lane for somebody to solve the problem. I was holding on for almost a year, and then an opportunity presented itself in the form of something which I've never done before. That is a city lifestyle magazine. The earlier owner, great guy who wants to play golf and he want to retire, and I didn't want to play golf and not retire, so we gladly exchanged places. So he is happily having some fun time with golf, hopefully in New Jersey. And I am getting a chance to mingle with the local community in the West Hartford and the Glastonbury. That's been a treat so far.
Hey, well, welcome. And yeah, as I said, you're no stranger to change. So let's start with what's probably the most major change in anybody's life. You actually picked up, left your home country, and moved to the United States. Now, how long ago was that?
It was in 2010, December 12th, I landed in Hartford. And while I was in India, one of the managers from the US called me and said they needed my expertise in US. And the selling factor was they sold Hartford as one of the major cities in between Boston and New York. And they kind of told me that this is a great place to be in. And I didn't know they sold me a screensaver until I came in here. It was middle of a winter storm and a cold day. I landed here, and I come from around 100 degrees centigrade is normal with around 90% humidity, which translates into roughly 39 degrees centigrades. And I come into the New York, and it is less than 39 degree Fahrenheit. So that's how the change welcomed me here.
Yeah, I mean, climate just by itself must have been jarring. But I mean, the culture of New England is so different from India. Certainly, again, the weather, there's a lot of adjustments you had to make. So, how did you face all of that?
So some of the adjustments, the one good thing about working in a multinational company is you get accustomed to various set of people. Before coming to US, I was supporting a lot of European clients, so I had an opportunity to travel to European cities. So the place itself was not a big deal, but what was one of the bigger changes was the reliance of an automobile or a car is a must in US as compared to the European cities. That was a big change.
Yeah, that's something that's kind I don't want to say unique to New England, but we do have a certain lack of public transportation here that makes it very difficult to get around if you don't have a car.
Yes. And believe it or not, in India, you get a lot of domestic help. When me and my wife, who happens to be a CPA, she was a CPA in India as well. We both worked. We used to have a driver to chauffeur us around, and we had a maid at home to help us around the shore. So we had to. That was a big change, and because we didn't know how to use the dishwasher first day, so it took us some time to figure it out, what to do, what not to do. So there were certain things, but culturally, thankfully, it was a very welcoming setup. I don't want to generalize this or this one, but especially when I landed in here, there was a lot of people who came forward to help, irrespective of their. And a lot of people taught me what to do, how to do in the meetings, because a lot of culturally, the change was vastly different when compared to European clients, and especially the New England, New York-ish crowd is a bit more blunt on the face. Whereas, no, the one of the reasons is like, for example, when somebody from a British client who wants to complain about you, he will write a 5 page of nice flowery email saying all the great things I did. And the last paragraph will say, can you please get rid of him? So I just need to read the last paragraph to find the answer. What is the intent of the mail? But in US, you can still, at least in the New York side, you can say, hey, Shri, you're not working here for me. That's a kind of a thing. That was a very culturally big difference. And the other thing is culturally majorly different was, I don't know how much of you noticed, most of the people coming from India have a problem saying no. We don't do well in saying no. So even you ask me and give me an improbable target, the answer would be yes. And then slowly I will try to come up with reason. That was another big change. I had to very consciously challenge myself to be saying no with a reason. That was one of the biggest cultural shocks and changes I had to accommodate myself. And the last but not the least is the English. What I mean by that is we lose a lot of maybes in between. Like, I don't have a definitive, there is no black or white in India. Like, you always have a bit of a in between space. So that being direct is another thing which I had to learn over here. So those are some of the cultural challenges. Obviously, I missed my home food. So we don't have not so many Indian restaurants as you have now here in the earlier like 2010s, early 2011s. But slowly it changed, but it was a nice change. Like, I started enjoying this place, especially the winter weather, which we never got there in India. And for once, I thought I will never wish to have the sunshine again coming from 100 degrees plus place. But you never know how much I long for it.
Especially after this winter.
Yes, definitely, yes. So that was the cultural adaptation to this country.
And how long did you stay with Accenture once you were here?
Until last year, May of 2025.
Now you had said, yeah, you were starting to feel burnt out. This is actually something we've talked about frequently on the podcast. How did burnout affect you? How did it show up in your life?
So a company like Accenture or any company, the name is Accenture, but any multinational, any IT in a competitive landscape, you are like, if you're standing still, you're going backwards. So you're always on the move, you're learning something, you're competing with unknown people who is either performing from India or UK or Australia, who knows. So that was one thing. And I was passionate about all the AI and the Gen AI stuff which was coming up. And my domain was insurance. So I was pretty much engrossed with some of the big insurance companies I worked with in and around the New England area, the tri-state area, to implement some of their latest and greatest technology-wise, the AI, reorchestrating their underwriting or claim flows, all those kind of interesting stuff. But when we do such interesting stuff, it also comes with a toll of, like, at some point of time in the years of 22, 23, it was like I was doing 14, 15 hours of work on an average. Plus, some of my clients were in New Jersey, New York, Philadelphia, and Florida. So the travel was not very much planned. It was kind of last minute decisions, or somebody will call me saying, "Hey, Shri, can we meet up for lunch tomorrow and in Philly?" So I had to go up and down and come. Those kind of things actually took a toll on myself. One is the travel, the other one is on the family. Like, I kind of, when I tell my wife, she used to give me a stare and ask, is it a permission or information? So I have to navigate that part as well. So those kind of things slowly started getting to me. And I also started missing some of the smaller events, like the parents teachers as a calls for the kids. So those kind of things started to get one by one. And in 2023 November, I felt sick. And the COVID, I believe it was, though I didn't test positive, but it actually took a month and a half for me to recover. So that was kind of a thing which kind of put me on notice, saying, hey, either you are neglecting yourself too much, or something is mentally not stable with you, right with you. So that's made me think about what should I do, or what is it in my best interests going forward. If I scale down, I don't know whether I'll have a job in the company, but what else can be? What is going to be effective use of my time, give me some flexibility at the same time? I have to put food on the table. So that was a choice I have to think about.
Yeah, obviously it's reckoning. And I mean, you've heard my spiel enough at the AM Connections meetings that the most important thing is the person in the mirror. And if that doesn't come first from your heart, which obviously a lot of what you have done is, I mean, obviously the family is by far the first with you, and you do have a beautiful family. I'm seeing pictures of them in the magazine too, which is just wonderful. But that's so important. It's just to have that reckoning with yourself, take a look in the mirror, and just do what you have to do for that person in the mirror who is incredibly perfect themselves. You have all kinds of talents, but you also have things that you really want to do with your heart. So why not reach out and do that? And obviously what you've done is just fantastic. And I can, I mean, I just see you being happy and joyful every time that you're there, and, seeing your family situation. And I can't imagine what it was like traveling all over the place with young kids and things like that too. I mean, I've always just been solidly entrenched in Avon. It'll be 4 years this year. So you doing what you're doing and young enough to be able to start enjoying it and doing things the way you want to do it, that's more power to you. It's so fantastic. It's a fantastic story for all those people out there. And I'm sure you would encourage them that, if you're feeling some of these symptoms that you had to go through, just, hey, take a deep breath, talk to your wife or talk to somebody else, close friends, and so on and so forth. What we always talk about is doing some research on things that you like to do and things that you're good at and so on, and come up with some alternatives and just try them. And that's where you are, which is great.
And one other funny quote I read somewhere was they told about, like, it was a WhatsApp or something forward, and it said about how the top 1% of the global, all those things, and said nobody ever got rich by just getting salary. So that is another thing. Said, okay, why not try something to own something rather than just get a salary?
Yep.
That's very true. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about, you're coming from a tech background and you moved into a print magazine, which, I mean, let's face it, print has been around, much longer than it was, some of the original technology was the printing press. What encouraged you to move in that direction? What attracted you to it?
Short answer is my wife. So it's very difficult to sell anything to my wife. And my wife somehow advertised in the magazine, which itself said something about the magazine for me. And so if she is convinced that she can advertise and get clients, I think that's a good avenue to target. That was my first instinct. And the second thing was what gave me the confidence I can do the magazine business is keeping the technology to magazine. This one, end of the day, one thing I felt I was good at is with connecting with people. And in all my years in the IT world, what I realized and learned is people buy from people. They're already convinced about the product. So they don't have to be convinced about the product because 90% of the time they know what they are getting into. It's the 10% is all about, am I the right fit for them? Am I going to help them in their time of crisis? Am I going to stand a shoulder to shoulder to them? Is that all it counts? It's not about I sell them and I just walk away saying, hey, I'll see you in 3 years. So I was always good at that. And I have built some relationships which transcends the clients. I move from client to client, but still I can't name the client, but there is one person whom I have not worked with him in the last 10 years, but still I have one lunch with him every quarter. So I felt confident in myself and meeting various people, and I was always good at making conversation. So those are the traits which I considered are important for this magazine kind of a business. And plus the confidence was this magazine has already been in circulation for last few years, and it already had a pipeline built with it. So all these things gave me a confident one. And as I said, my wife was a big pillar of support and encouragement for me in terms of when she started her business, I gave her the full support saying, I'll take care of the family, you just build a business. And she did the same for me now. So those are the kind of things which made me jump from a monthly twice a paycheck to a business which I have to think about what happens next month if I don't sell enough.
Yeah, that's something a lot of folks don't think about, is they go, oh, you own a business, you must be doing so well. It's like, and in fact, most, especially small business owners, actually make less than folks who are on salary. A recent study showed when somebody starts a business, when they're leaving corporate to start a business, it usually takes them 3 years to get to the point where they're making as much as they were on salary. So it's a whole different mindset and a very different set of concerns.
I agree with you on that. And also, one more thing which I can list out from my own experiences in corporate, you generally always have a boss unless you're a CEO. See, even CEOs
Yes.
as bosses. But what I mean by that is when there is a boss, there is always a, it's like a drill sergeant. They have something for you to do all the time. So you don't
Yes.
have to think about it. You are not the one sitting around and making sure what you should do, what next, how this one. So sometimes you also tend to slack off as a business owner. I did that mistake in the initial days. It took me some the core word is discipline, right? Then discipline is
Yes.
not something all about getting up in the morning and doing it. It's also about consciously training your mind from a corporate world into your own self business. That was one of the biggest challenges I faced because during my 21 years with Accenture, when I get up in the morning, I definitely know for at least 300 out of 356 days, I know what I'm doing. Like I have to get to a problem or I have to, whatever. I knew what I'm, at least or 6 out of the 8 hours, I know what I'm doing. But today, like for example, I got up today morning, even though I have a list, my first meeting was at 11 o'clock. I had time from 5:30 in the morning till 10:30. I had to leave the house. So it's up to me how do I want to judiciously use that 5 hours. Either I can scout for more business or follow up on paperwork or whatnot. It's all about that discipline. It takes a lot of time because you have to unlearn a lot of things. Earlier, you're so
Yes.
used to somebody sending an email and following that like a robot, but now you're not. You have to think through it. But that's where the technology also comes in and helps. So with the
Good.
advent of this, all these chat GPTs and all those things, you can be smart about it. Like, for example, yesterday I was, no, not yesterday, Friday, I was doing something about, I wanted to write an email to somebody I've never met. They're sitting in California, but I was a bit confused of how to draft that email. When I asked the Gemini, can you help me? But the clear questions were like, hey, I want you to help me draft an email which will not go into spam nor be dismissed. I have to give a lot of parameters. And surprisingly, it taught me a lot. It said, oh, you have to be direct with the name. If you're sending a mail to Eric Lopkin, or saying, hey, advertise, don't do that. Say, Eric, I want to do this with you. Then don't send attachment. Apparently, attachments are a big red flag for spam filters.
Yes, they are. And you make a good point. I mean, in my business, I create a lot of content, and I have been using AI not for completed content, but to start off the process because it's so much easier getting an idea from AI, looking at what it's put together, and then going from there rather than staring at the blank screen trying to figure out what it is I want to write.
Yes. So all my AI experience, I'm using this in different way over here. So that is another thing which I felt like as an individual owner, you need a lot of self-discipline to be your own boss and be your own mind master. That is one thing. And the other part is think through it. Like sometimes I also feel people don't pay enough attention to advertise for their self, forget about others, even though I'm in the business of asking people to advertise with me. But what I felt was if I don't talk about myself, nobody's going to know about it.
Yes, that's very true.
So it is another, and there's a lot of avenues. You come to the networking meetings, you have your LinkedIn, this. So there are a lot of avenues. It's how do you take advantage of them is another aspect I kind of learning and unlearning and things like that.
Yeah, it's always a constant, learning. Again, I started off the podcast talking about how I'm always trying to learn new things, whatever the next thing is, or just get better at things I'm already doing. And as an entrepreneur, that's really the key. You're never going to know everything, but there's always going to be something else going, oh, wait a minute, let me look into this.
Yes.
So you've got two publications, one covering the West Hartford, Connecticut area, one covering the Glastonbury area. Coming from a completely different culture, what has covering those areas, what has intrigued you about them? Has there been anything that, a story came up and you went, oh, wait, I need to know more about this?
Yes. So one of the interesting things came was I I kept hearing this. People don't cross the river.
Yeah.
So I really had to do a lot of research to understand what that meant. So then I actually went to the historic ferry to really, I crossed it once to see really what happens. I think nothing was,
Nothing
yeah,
happened.
nothing happened to me, but at least I figured out it was.
Yes, for those of our listeners who are not familiar with the state of Connecticut, Connecticut is bisected by the Connecticut River. And for some reason, people will talk, oh, that's the other side of the river. I can't go there. That's over there. When I moved up here from New York City, that absolutely baffled me. Because it's not like you're asking people to swim across the river. There's bridges that, it's a road. And for the first, I think, 5 years that I was here, all of my jobs were on the other side of the river. So I crossed the river twice a day, every day, and could not understand why folks were going, oh, well, no, that's the other side of the river. And then there's a couple of other ones just because of the geography of the state. I've heard the same thing about Avon Mountain. That's the other side of the mountain. We don't go there. Even though, again, it's not a big deal.
Yep, I go.
Yeah,
I know.
That's where I live, and I've done a whole lot of stuff in West Hartford, and there's that little big mountain between us, and it's just so. I mean, people are people, and so the quirks are kind of amusing, but it's just the way that we are, and you just have to kind of put up with it. It's amusing, and I'm sure that you're very amused by this whole thing, and
Exactly. So,
yes,
and
it's just
that was one thing. And then you are in the South Glastonbury, that they said as if they are coming from a different planet. So that was another thing I have to learn to. So where I'm going with this is, even though I've stayed in Connecticut for almost 15 years, I never heard these things until I got into this side of the world. So it took me some time to figure things out. So I had to spend a lot of time going to spaces. Like, for example, I picked one of the farms in the South Glastonbury, which was towards the other side. It was going towards the Portland side. I went there and actually I asked them, what do you mean by this? Why you think you are unique from the main Glastonbury? And it was interestingly, they said like Glastonbury has been such an old town right from the days they even thought about seeding. So that is the kind of, it's a very old population. We have been here for a long time. And then we saw the town getting slowly expanded. So we still feel the old people versus the newcomers type, even in spite of the few centuries difference between them.
Yes.
So that was one thing which was a bit quirky, and from a culturally standpoint was different. And the other thing was about like, it's also sometimes we never paid attention, at least I never paid attention to how certain businesses and certain demographies will work. Like, so that was another thing which I learned. Like, for example, when I was talking to a business owner, they clearly said, hey, this particular demography, which generally your readers are not my clients. I don't serve them. So it took me back a bit. Why? So then I had to go and understand and research a bit. Okay, who are the people, like why and what? It took me some time to understand that social and the cultural bindings which people get to it. So that was a big change for me in terms of understanding, other than some of the quirks which you heard about the South Glastonbury and this one or the across the river, and that was one thing. And even though West Hartford and Glastonbury, those are two distinctly different towns. West Hartford is very highly what you call a charged up community kind of a thing. They are like, you can always see a crowd and kind of a thing in that place. And there is the mixes, local business owners, new families, and a bit of aging population is comparatively less. But on the Glastonbury side, it's a very, you have to raise an army slowly types. You have to cajole them to come together kind of a thing. But once they come, there's no stopping of that. And what I also learned was there's a lot of CXOs who live in Glastonbury, but they operate their business in the neighboring towns. like a Windsor, you Stratford, and this. So that was so my pitch for asking for advertisement or partnership changed in terms of saying what I necessarily say in West Stratford doesn't mean I have to say that I can say the same thing in Glastonbury and vice versa. So I have to be careful about, like, when somebody asks in West Stratford, I would say you can still advertise in Glastonbury, but if your target audience is the CXOs who want to make a note of you.
Yeah, I'd imagine. Yeah, I mean, obviously, one of the wild things just about being in the United States is all the different cultures that we have. I mean, we truly are a melting pot of a lot of different things, which makes things fantastic, but also leads to a whole lot of conflicts and so on and so forth. So I'm sure that I'm sure you saw some things back in India, but I'm sure coming over here and seeing everything firsthand has made quite an impression on you too, especially if you spend too much time on social media and everything else. The world's going to end tomorrow. But the bottom line is that we're all wonderful people, and it's just an amazing, amazing opportunity to do that. And so, I mean, having you with the magazine after Gary, I mean, you're two wonderful people, but I wouldn't consider yourself being like each other a lot and so on and so forth either. But it's just a great opportunity. And that's one of the beautiful things about being over here. So.
Absolutely. And also it has given me an opportunity to understand the local community a lot better. It's like I do get to interact with the chamber or the mayor of the town. I did have an opportunity to meet with her. And then I met with the police chiefs and departments. So those are all something which, like, for example, not everybody wants to go to a police station every day to understand what they do and things. So those are some of the things which gave me an opportunity to understand that there are a lot of unseen people who do a lot of sacrifice behind the scenes to do the work. We don't get a chance to appreciate them on a regular basis. This gave me an opportunity to understand what they go through, how they do things, and I'm really grateful for all the great work they do to keep us safe. We don't really pay attention to some of those things, but that's something which goes, it's like the old Yes Minister saying, to keep things transparent, a lot of things has to be done behind the scenes.
Yes, fantastic. So we are just about out of time. So before we wrap up, if our listeners want to get more information on either West Hartford lifestyle or Glastonbury lifestyle, how can they do so?
So they can go to the website citylifestyle.com/Glastonbury or /West Hartford. There you have my contact details. You can schedule a meeting with me. And we also have a social media handle on Instagram and Facebook. You can just go citylifestyle.com/Glastonbury/ or citylifestyle West Hartford. And we are available to partner and just give you more love and care to your brand.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much for being with us, Sri. Chip, what do you think is the big takeaway for our listeners this week?
Yeah, I just think it's fantastic to have you here on this podcast to listen to your story, where you are, where you were. And I just find being totally inspirational for you people out there. The bottom line is find something that you like to do and just go out there and reach out and do it. And the bottom line is people in general are going to be there that want to help. And obviously, when we talk about networking and so on and so forth, if the person in front of you can't help, there's always the next. So, and you see that too. So, I mean, it's just been so great to have you on here. And I'm so glad things are going successful for you. And I look forward to seeing you second or fourth Fridays every month.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think for me, the big concept that our listeners should take away is the fact that, change happens. And it's not necessarily comfortable, but it shouldn't be scary. And you can do so much more than you ever thought you could. I mean, in the early 2000s, I'm sure you never thought you'd be publishing magazines. That's something that just came about and you took advantage of the opportunity. So keep an eye out for those opportunities. Just because something's different doesn't make it bad.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the Success Showcase. You can catch every episode at xvadio.com, the Apple Podcast app, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music, and wherever you find podcasts. Remember, make this your best week ever and make next week even better. We'll see you then.